You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your host, Amy, and we have another full house, you guys. Let me welcome Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Amy. So great to be here. In spite of I'm having some vocal issues due to allergies, so I don't know how much I'll be talking today, but I still loved the episode and I wanted to podcast with you guys.
Absolutely. Well, we are glad you are here and hope those allergies subside. Christos, well, hello there, my dear.
Good morning from the San Diego quadrant.
Yes. How are things?
Amazing. I just started a bathroom remodel project, so I'm feeling very creative.
Nice. Are we getting new colors as well?
I'm doing like the black, whites, and grays because that's how I roll.
Yes, I do. I can't wait to use my new guest bathroom when I visit.
You'll be the first guest.
Yes. Kristin, hello, my dear.
Hello.
How are you doing this week?
I'm good. It's been a very, very rainy week up here in Canada, but that's okay because our province is already on fire. It's very sad. So we're very happy that Mother Nature's thrown us a bit of a bone here with some water.
Some moisture. Very good. And Kelvin, my love, how are you?
Hello, from the always moist Manchester. I have a house full of guests this weekend. It's a holiday weekend here in the UK. And I'm just back from having a very big Sunday roast, followed by the biggest slice of carrot cake you've seen in your life. So I may be in a sugar coma in about 10-15 minutes, so apologies if I'm a little quiet this week too, but hey, there's 5 of us, it'll be cool.
Exactly. Well, we'll just shake you and wake you up. Well, let's get to our escape pod.
This is the bridge. All hands to emergency escape pods.
Escape pod.
This week, we will be reviewing and talking about Lagrange Point. This is the penultimate episode of our season 5. Oh my gosh, one more episode to go. So let's figure out how you guys enjoyed this episode. Kelvin, let's start with you.
I think it was a very solid, enjoyable episode, and I keep throwing James under the bus, my partner. When this episode finished, he actually said, I stayed awake for all of that episode, and he sounded really happy about that. So we're going to take that it was a great episode. Lots of action, lots of exposition, a great setup for the finale next week. Very much enjoyed.
Yeah. Christos?
Yeah, and it's not just the penultimate of the season, it's the penultimate of the series. So, which was a little bit of a pinch, right? I really enjoyed it too. I when I first logged in and it was like, oh, it's 45 minutes. It's like at least 10 shorter than the others have been recently. But it is definitely that episode that starts the finale and leaves us on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Well, not a little bit, a cliffhanger. And sets us up for the finale. But really enjoyable, action-packed, and beautiful, beautiful special effects. I thought what they did with the 2 black holes and everything looked really stunning.
Kristin, this episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes. Anything special there?
I think you can see his influence was sort of the ending, and it very much had a Times Arrow Part 1 cliffhanger where they just disappear through the ether. No one knows where it is, and we're like, well, we gotta go, peace, and they just walk through, and now we're all sitting here for another week biting our nails waiting. So I wonder if that had any sort of effect on him where he saw that opportunity to tie them in. But I too thought it was a very solid episode. I enjoyed that the big the big pinnacle of what we've been waiting for was essentially a barreling through space.
It was like something off a pirate ship.
Yeah. Or like somebody going over Niagara Falls and they're just boo. I don't know. I did chuckle a little bit at that, but otherwise I thought it was a really good episode. Great ending, and I'm very, very excited for next week. Sad, but excited.
Yeah. Mark, how did you like Lagrange Point?
Oh, I thought it was a fun episode of Discovery. They've been episodic yet keeping with the theme of the season. I think, this year in particular, I think they've done a really good job with that. I too thought it was funny that the whole, the end result of them getting there was the object was like a, whiskey barrel essentially. So that was kind of funny. And I liked what Kristin said as far as it being like that other episode from TNG, Time Zero, where they just sort of disappear and you're like, okay, where are they going? So it'll be interesting to find out like next week. You kind of, cool little cliffhanger.
Yeah, I found it interesting that the Breen would send in just some nobody, but like if Discovery or if, anyone in the Federation would have got that portal, they would have sent like Burnham. I mean, let's just be real. Of course she would go in, but like the Breen are sending, nobody. And then finally Maul's like, all right, I'm going to go. And again, I remember complaining about this at the beginning of the episode. Why did they not send a probe first? I just don't get it. Why are we sending human lives into this unknown when you should first try a probe to gather data? Christos?
Let me make that. I can help you make sense of that. So the Breen just have less carry. They're just a less carrying species, right? So they're literally sending cannon fodder through there to test it. Like they're not even screwing with the probe. They're like, here, you're just, frontline soldier. You go in first. You go in first. So whereas, and then Maul's just like, well, I got to go because she's going to lose her opportunity. It's about to fall into the hands of Discovery's crew. That's why Maul goes because Locke is more important to her above all.
Yeah.
I was thinking of you at the end of the episode, Mark, with the whole Messiah complex of Michael Burnham going into the light. It was like she was going into heaven.
She can stay there.
But I think that Christos makes a good point in that this really highlights the Breen's hierarchical society and how they devalue those that they do see as lesser than. It actually reminded me very much of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade when they're trying to go find the goblet and they're just sending in these poor guides and their heads keep rolling out. And I'm like, oh, that's so sad. But I guess that is how some humans view other humans is lesser than. And I think it's actually a very interesting societal discussion. You see, there's always more when you peel the proverbial onion peel back of Star Trek. You get a lot. Yeah. So,
for an action-packed episode, so to speak, I do like how much, character exposition we got. We saw Raynor and Tilly and Adira. All of them got, fleshed out a little bit more and more to do over on Discovery and on the Breen ship. And then we get to see, Saru and Tarina also having some interactions outside of what's going on. At last, exactly. Poor Saru, we haven't seen him since like episode 4, maybe 3. Yeah. So I'm glad that they kind of picked that back up for the last 2 episodes.
So do you think that we will get a Saru and Tarina nuptials next?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope so. And it'll be like a little bit like Nemesis was obviously the OG ending of Next Generation for many, many years with the Riker Troy wedding happily ever after. So Discovery should end with a nice happily ever after for Saru.
Yeah.
I love the juxtaposition that they're having with Tarina and Saru with duty versus logic versus their love for one another and how they're balancing that conflict, but trying to keep logic above all else.
Can I compare and contrast that to, because I love that they are very duty comes first. Well, it's got to be done. This is our job. It's almost the Vulcan likeness of that compared to Culber and Stamets. Oh, don't send Jenediah on the away team. They might get hurt.
Oh, so
get over yourself.
I feel really bad for Stamets, and not just that, the actor, because that's what he's been relegated to, is like the worried dad. And I know he sciences the way to get into the shield, that angle to hit the shields and everything to get in. But for the most part, he's just seen as this emotional parent. And I think it does a disservice to the actor. Just saying. That's probably my only down, I would say, for the episode, is I didn't like that. It seemed too whiny.
Yeah, and then when Hugh was like, "Oh, it reminds me when I was being sent off to 10C and you were, wishing me be safe," and I was like, "Oh, I totally forgot about that." And I loved the thing with Raynor. His story arc, I'm now appreciating a little bit more. It was very predictive. But now he's like trying to figure out where he is as first officer. And, his seat really should be the captain's chair. He's got the con, like he needs to be there. And for them, like, he never sits in it. He's just wandering and wandering. So to have Tilly and Raynor have that little moment, I thought was really cute, and just, again, sort of getting Raynor to fit in with the crew a little bit better. I liked it this episode.
I really liked all the bridge banter as well. I mean, I still don't know their names really, but the two, like, Detmer and OO replacements. Yes. But the whole, when this is over, let's have drinks. So let's have drinks now.
Love that.
I thought that was great.
Somewhere. Yeah.
It's now o'clock or something like that. Yeah. I love that too. Well, the finale is next week, and if this note I got from Paramount is correct, it's 86 minutes long. So
nice.
Which is almost, an episode and a half. That's, I'm assuming that they're not going to show any behind the scenes stuff with this. Listeners, this would be for the advanced screening in LA. I got the email about the details of that. So it says it's 86 minutes long. So that would be with the epilogue attached to it and everything. So any major predictions, just really quickly?
I definitely want Booker and Burnham together, like together. Solid couple like Saru and Tarina.
I don't know if it will happen. I think it'll be a shame if the bridge characters that have left supposedly to escort the Enterprise that they found off don't come back, and hopefully maybe even if they were refilmed in the epilogue to give them the proper nod, even if it's just being there. But I think I heard elsewhere that wouldn't it be cool if the ISS Enterprise came in to support them and fight the Breen and they were actually on the bridge? That would be quite cool. They've also been mentioning this thing about a path drive, which has not been explained. So that's going to be something pretty cool that we're going to get to see on Saru's shuttle when he's traveling to see them. I'm thinking kind of quantum slipstream drive. So yeah, the techie in me is predicting something big for that, hopefully.
Any predictions with Maul, Locke, Kristin?
I think Maul will die. I think she's gonna die. And I think that maybe it happens in some sort of, they try to bring Locke back with this technology, and as this always goes in every story that's ever been done, when you're trying to raise someone from the dead, disaster strikes and they can't do it, and that leads to her either opting herself out or dying in some sort of a battle. I don't know, but you don't mess with that. So necromancy is not something we should be dabbling in. So
I do predict a scene with Locke almost like returning, like coalescing, coming back together, like the hands reaching out and then it going terribly wrong, so that kind of the close, almost there.
Remember that episode of Voyager really early on? Since we reviewed like an early Voyager episode, I've just continued on. So now I've got Voyager on
Oh,
top
wow.
of mine. The one where the war criminal shows up on Voyager, the one that destroyed Talax. And he's trying to bring them back, and they start to form in the thing, and they're screaming because they're dead, and I'm assuming that's very painful. I wonder if it'll be reminiscent of that. Where it's just like, oh, abort.
Does anyone think Quajon is going to come back? Use the technology.
Yeah, well, remember,
planet back.
Well, we have that route that he got in last week's episode or the one before, and so whether it's Quajon comes back or they find a place to plant that root and start developing a new Quajon, so to speak.
Oh, nice.
I think that would be really cool.
Mark, do you have any idea what this progenitor's technology is?
Magic.
The recipe for biscuits.
I think it's
no
going to
clue.
be. I wonder if it's going to be something more like less tangible and more about who we are as living species, very a la The Chase, where they think it's going to be this big whatever. And it's about, don't forget, we are all on this earth together. We are all in this universe together to support one another, to care for one another, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to be like, what? The Breen are probably going to be pretty ticked. The Enterprise is probably going to get it, maybe. Or, sorry, the Federation, not the Enterprise. Woo!
So I would like that too. And I also would love if we saw another message from the progenitors like we saw at the end of The Chase. But I will say that, remember, all these scientists after The Chase deemed that this needed to be hidden. It was so powerful. So there is something, very all-powerful about this technology that, is that they went through all of this trouble with the clues and hiding it to keep it away from the wrong hands. So it is something. I predicted weeks ago that Rayner would die. I'm still predicting it.
Okay.
I'm holding to that.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to see Burnham and Booker together. Sorry, totally returning to this topic. Unless Burnham can be 100% in to the relationship and give Booker everything that they would deserve as a couple together, then he needs to find someone else for him. He's been through a lot, and I think he needs a partner who is going to be fully there for him. And if Burnham is still going to be sort of wishy-washy with, personal life versus professional life, and I don't know. That's just where I'm thinking, coming as a romantic towards this, but
Yeah, she's very mission oriented.
She is.
Yeah.
And he's not as much. I think he's looking for that happily ever after, and he needs someone who's going to give that to him.
I don't know. When she decided to have a little sidebar with him on the Breen ship in the middle of the mission to talk about her feelings, as you do, I thought that was, okay, here we go. This is why people criticize the show, because you would not do that. It's like they all agreed this was like the biggest cloak and dagger. The stakes were so high. The chance of success was so small. And then we're going to go talk about our feelings right in the middle of the Breen ship and, a little passageway. That took me out of the episode. Just saying.
Now is not the time.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. Well, one more episode to go, and that will be the end of Discovery. So,
Amy, did you hear the one line from this episode? I thought you were going to be all about it.
oh yes, I've talked about it on our Discord server, listeners. So please join us there on Discord. And yes, math. What episode or what series talks about math and celebrates math more than Discovery? I'm very excited. I want those clips so that I could use them for my Amy's math moment. So
There you
I'm
go.
hoping someone can get me those.
And we need a little shirt that says math does not lie.
Yes, that's the power of math, people.
I love that one.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to today's discussion because we are returning to Get Off My Ship series. This is part 5, and we are covering the wonderful TNG episode Rascals. Mark, what in the heck's going on with Rascals? Give us a little synopsis or summary.
Well, for our Transporter Malfunction... Oh, no, sorry. Our Get Off My Ship series. I kid. No, so the episode this is a really interesting sort of hybrid of the two kind of series where they mashed up a couple of different plot devices into one episode where you do have that Transporter Malfunction element, but it's merged with the Get Off My Ship series. So at the beginning, the whole episode, you have a very interesting assortment of crew members coming back from it wasn't an away mission. It kind of seemed like they were just sort of on a holiday together doing
A
something.
conference.
Yeah.
Conference. Okay. But yeah, there's like Keiko O'Brien's there for some reason, and Guinan's off the ship. I don't know, whatever. But we're there with Picard, and they're coming back, and they hit some sort of spatial anomaly thingy, and of course, let's beam them out in the middle of this spatial anomaly thingy, and it causes them to turn into little children. They're all about 12 years old. And while they're trying to deal with that, they get attacked by what you think is going to be the Klingons. That ends up being the Ferengi. And then all of the adults get beamed off the ship, essentially, most of them anyway. And then the children, quote unquote, Picard and Guinan and them, they all have to retake the ship from the Ferengi. So it's a fun adventure episode. There's a lot of twists and turns and a lot of great acting for the kids. And this is the last and only time you'll hear me say that on this podcast because I'm not into kids on the shows.
Wow, you really are unwell. Who are you and where's Mark?
So, Mark, you did tease a little bit of what I was texting you guys. I'm like, wait, this isn't a Get Off My Ship series. I was like totally convinced this was a Transporter Malfunction, which we do cover on All Good Things. And I literally timed it 23 minutes before we even think about running into aliens, much less Klingon, who end up being Ferengi, and then they take over the ship. So debate, is this a better Transporter Malfunction or is it a better Get Off Your Ship? Christos?
Well, you could debate it. I would say maybe evenly both because it truly is a Transporter Malfunction, and that's a throughput from the entire episode. And that is the theme for the entire episode. The Get Off My Ship, to your point, is only the second half. And you're right. When you rewatch this episode, it's like everything's just kind of going along. You're kind of hitting the end of the second act already, beginning the third act. And then, oh, wait, what? The Ferengi are here? So I would say it's a Transporter Malfunction if I had to pick one or both.
Mm-hmm. Kristin?
I would probably align with Christos in that it is predominantly a Transporter Malfunction. When I think of Rascals and the rewatch, and when I am like just talking to people about it and think about, that's the main plot point I talk about is the Transporter Malfunction. I don't talk about the Ferengi showing up. That's just not what I find is important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the other way. I am all about the Get Off My Ship. So when I mentally rewatch this episode, I think of, the comm badges hitting the Ferengi and them all being trapped in the transporter room and how cool that is. So this is very much a Get Off My Ship episode for me.
Well, I think, in most of the episodes of Trek in a lot of series, it's like it takes place in 3 parts. So there's the beginning part that sort of sets up what the story is. Then there's, towards the middle, there's like this big problem that has to happen. And then, the whole ending part of the episode is them trying to solve it. So if we're structuring it in that way, then it's a Get Off My Ship series because, the turning into children, that is sort of the setup for what will happen later with the get off my ship, which is midway point of the episode. And they spend the episode trying to figure out how to get the Ferengi off the ship. So I still think it's a get off my ships by a slim margin.
Oh, Amy, you've got the
Amy.
decider.
Uh-oh. Tiebreaker.
Well, I would like to ask, can we think of another episode that is split down between two of our series like this, of our tropes?
Well, we did change one the other week, didn't we? So we were
Yeah.
like, how? But I don't know if that was a split or whether we just got the scene completely wrong.
Yeah.
We did a last minute
Well,
rewrite.
Christos?
Let me add this to it, because this might think of differently. Had the second half of the story not happen, it would be a very anticlimactic episode, because in this particular transporter malfunction, it's just a matter of giving Dr. Crusher and Miles O'Brien the time to science their way out of it, and then everything goes away. Like, it just would have been like, oh, this just happened yesterday and now it's over. So it's kind of an anticlimactic transporter episode, so that it does it to become a get off my ship. I think maybe I can change my vote just by talking myself out of it.
There we go.
Or it could be the first of our series of Don't Go to a Conference.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We have talked about that.
I mean, look what happened. The Timescape's another one where they come back and everything's all screwed
Yeah.
up. I mean,
And
So
parallels.
It could be a
Jordy?
shuttlecraft series.
yeah. You know what it is, Kelvin? It's one more. Don't get in a shuttlecraft.
Yeah.
Something's going to go wrong.
Escape pod.
Well, even on Discovery, when Michael Burnham is, coming back from her trial when she got arrested and as a mutineer, she's on that shuttlecraft. Oops! They go through this strange thing where there's space bugs that are eating the warp core. So
Yeah, that's another one.
just stay out of shuttlecrafts.
Yeah. So the transporter was very specific. And you just sort of have to roll with it, because otherwise you roll your eyes. It's like, okay, their bodies changed, but they got to keep their memories, their skills, like experiences. Like, that was a little too convenient,
Yeah.
Christos.
But I love it, because we always say this, right? If you could go back and do it all over again with what you know now, we have this hypothetical all the time. If I could be 20 years younger, but keep everything I've learned and go back 20 years, I'd be freaking dangerous. And you know what I mean? Like, I would be so dangerous, because how you would handle relationships and blah, blah, blah. Like, so I'd yes, for sure I'd do it. So this is literally that episode, how putting that into an episode of, if you could do it all over again with what you know. Like, I love how Crusher and Picard, with it, Guinan and Picard, where they're talking about like going back to Starfleet Academy. And,
Oh, that was Deanna.
Deanna, sorry. And they're like talking about like, you could go learn a whole nother trade, and then when you're 10 or 15 years younger, go be a captain again, but go do something else. But you know everything. So imagine.
Yeah. How fun is Star Trek that we get to go down these little, thought experiments, and like, yeah, how powerful and amazing could we be if we could capture that experience and take it back as a younger self?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that scene with Troy. I actually think it's one of my favorite Troy counseling moments. She really got Picard to think differently and explore that this might not be a horrendous thing. This is an opportunity.
Right.
And she was so calm, and it was very casual. It was almost like a friend talking to a friend rather than a therapist doing the work. And it was just really an effective scene.
Yeah.
It was.
I'd love to call out that, like, for the most part, most of the main cast had something to do in this episode. I think Data and Geordi less, maybe Worf, but like Crusher, Riker, Picard, Troy, they all kind of had like a lot of screen time and doing their jobs, actually. O'Brien also, like, see them doing their jobs.
One thing I was surprised about this, because seeing the Klingons, I'm like, well, why? Then it was the Ferengi, and I'm like, whoa! This is season 6, and we're still trying to get the Ferengi to be the bad guys. I Did you guys think that the Ferengi was the right alien species for this, Kristin?
I would say yes, because this is a campy episode. We can't have the Romulan or the Borg or someone who has a real threat showing up and killing children. It would have put a damper on the whole jovial feel of this episode. But my question was always, how did you get that ship? Are you telling me that Ferengis overpowered Klingons and got their ship?
Or bought it. They called it an investment, didn't they? Like, did they bought
buy
it?
it? Oh,
Yeah.
Look at that. I'm learning something new all these years later. I thought that we were supposed to believe that they somehow stole the ship. I'm like, no.
Yeah. I like the fact that I don't know. They even said, like, I think Jerry Taylor said it had to be the Ferengi because you could never believe that they would take the ship back from the Cardassians or something like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But so I think it's good and bad. I think taking the ship back from the Ferengi makes total sense. The fact that the Ferengi were able to take the ship to begin with is what I have a hard time with.
Yeah. And I like almost the message that you can retake the ship by outsmarting your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all about, they didn't really use a lot of muscle to beat the Ferengi. As you've just said, Christos, Worf and Data got shot straight away. Unbelievable. But they outsmarted the Ferengi to get it back, which is a powerful message, I think. And that wouldn't have happened with any of the other baddies.
No.
Yeah, it was so obvious when Riker was explaining the computer system to the Ferengi that's like, well, you need this dual processor, blah, 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 blah. And well, I know I'm not stupid. And it's just like, what was that episode? Oh, where in Enterprise where they met the Ferengi? Sort of the same type of thing.
Yeah, we've done
Yeah,
this one.
just talk themselves out of it because the Ferengi are stupid. And yeah.
I just love the compare and contrast between season 6 Ferengi and season 1 Ferengi, when we're supposed to believe that this is going to be some ferocious alien species. And I was like, well, then don't make them look like the Sphinx cat version of a hobbit, because they're just these tiny little hairless people running around. Like, these aren't scary at all. They just need to see an orthodontist and they'll be fine. But I always found them to be comical, and I enjoyed. That's why I love them so much in DS9, is they lean into that comedy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, they really changed come season 3.
Yeah. They start to.
Well, Ronald D. Moore said that whole Riker scene talking to the Ferengi and the computer was a salute to Technobabble when he was writing it. I'm like, yeah, that was exactly what that was.
Yeah.
And well done to Jonathan Frakes. I wonder how many takes that took.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's even, if you visit your Star Trek companion listeners, there's Technobabble comes right out of the Back to the Future movies. He wrote it in. So there's a specific reference to the Technobabble.
Yeah.
But it was kind of funny to get to see Riker have to do it, because Riker doesn't always have to do. Jonathan Frakes never had to do a lot of Technobabble. It was always Data or Crusher or LaForge that always had all that, right? But Riker never usually has to do that.
Yeah. Well, one thing, let's move to assimilations and regenerations. One thing that I really liked and will assimilate is the idea of acting like a kid, which is like, how quickly can you adjust and your brain into thinking and going a different direction? And it was so obvious when little kid Jean-Luc was trying to access the computer in the classroom, which is obviously meant for children. And Guinan was like, you are doing this all wrong. Computer, can you display me the inside of the Enterprise, instead of show me the schematics, and so Guinan, I think, just has this fluidity and flexibility in her way of thinking, which I really admire. And Picard needs to learn to do that better, which in turn all of us need to do. So I loved how well Guinan was able to adjust to the circumstances and respond appropriately.
And how strange that it was Guinan that had the easiest time transitioning back to be a child, considering it's so long since she
Yeah.
was a child.
She's
You
the
think she'd have
oldest.
long forgotten those things.
Yeah, but she's so wise. Her outlook on everything. Can you imagine too for Guinan the reset button, right? Because Guinan's already hundreds and hundreds of years old, and to effectively get a reset button, had she chosen not to go back in the transporter and just grow up again, which
Yeah.
of all characters, I would buy hers doing that.
Hmm.
Because she's just got such that outlook. She's like, hey, I'll grow up again and do it all over again,
Yeah.
But
I think that
it's
just
pretty
shows her
cool.
emotional intelligence and what she's been able to learn throughout all her years, and knowing really when to sweat the small stuff or not sweat the small stuff. And for her, this was not worth fretting over. And I think that also shows how much faith she had in her fellow officers. Was she trusts so much that this will all work out. It'll be fine. We just have a little bump to get over. No big deal.
Mhm.
And I think we see that passed down, because if she hadn't sort of imparted to Jean-Luc that you have to sort of assume the role you're in and play that part a little bit, that's when he threw that hissy fit and was able to get to see Riker and all of that. So, which is one of the best scenes from Star Trek.
All right. So there is a callback to Future Imperfect when Riker has a son named Jean-Luc. And I love when, Jean-Luc does the now, and they take him up to the ready room and he sees Riker. And Riker looks surprised for like 2 seconds. And then he just smiles and puts a big hug around him, because it's like, okay, I'm going to play along. I know what you're up to. And let's do this, because it's almost like, he gets to be fatherly with Jean-Luc, which is complete role reversal.
Yeah. And because this is season 6, they have that background and, the chemistry, and they know each other's thoughts. So it works. It's believable. It's seamless. You're right.
Yeah. This is when shows get more playful. I mean, there can be this thing about an aging television show where suddenly it gets too far gone. But when you hit that sweet spot, which TNG was in its sweet spot 5 and 6, like you have just enough background on everybody that you can do this kind of stuff, but it's not tired yet.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. I'm always reminded of this episode whenever I watch the end of Picard season 3, and they're using the transporter guns to shoot the Borgified children and send them to the transporter room. So when it shows kind of like Sidney LaForge trying to get out of the transporter and ripping the doors open, I would be screaming at the TV, saying, why didn't they put a force field there like they did in Rascals? That would have been so much better. So the fact that we've done Picard season 3, and this is probably the first rewatch I've done of Rascals in several years. I don't know why it's never just randomly been on TV and I've watched it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it because it's the connect the dots for those 2 episodes. Mark, anything you'd like to assimilate?
Well, I mean, this is one of my favorite episodes of TNG. So there's so much I could assimilate about this. I don't hate the Ferengi. There's a lot of people that dislike the Ferengi. I like Ferengi episodes, especially on Deep Space Nine. They do a really good job with them. But yeah, this is the perfect species, I think, to have with this episode with the kids, because everybody else would be too menacing. I think that's what they said. We said earlier. But yeah, no, I just love the whole episode. One of my faves. I'll assimilate the episode.
I have another assimilation that it was only in doing research for today's episode that I actually realized that the whole science of the episode was completely made up. For 30 years, I thought that viroxic nucleic sequences were actually a thing, and if they were removed, obviously the effect of rematerializing as a child, but I believe that these genetic markers were placed there at puberty, and all. I think it's the power of Bev. That woman is one I've trusted all of my life, and why would she lie to me? But also, if you think of like Genesis with the intron virus, that was based on fact.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I just assumed that someone's done their homework on this, and I felt really cheated. That someone, I have
Aw.
probably spoken to people about this biology fact, and they've just nodded along, thinking, "Yeah,
Yep.
and I've just been peddling nonsense."
Well, I mean, the peroxic nucleic patterns maybe don't exist yet.
Ooh.
The human body and all of that has not been fully explored. So who knows? Maybe some science Trekkie will find a new something in the human body at some point and be like, you know what? I've got the perfect name for this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they should
Done.
attribute it to Bev. Call them Crusher-zomes.
Yeah. That's just a tribute to how great an actress Gates McFadden is, because she
It's
made you
true.
believe it. She made you
Good.
believe it. I particularly thought that the O'Briens were a great character to draw into this, whether it was going to be O'Brien or Keiko who had this happen to them. By having this happen to a married couple, especially one with a child, you could really show how something like this could be bad, because suddenly you have this like really bad situation where you have probably a 30-something-year-old male married to a 10-year-old. And
We have a safeguarding issue.
it's obviously it's a little creepy, and that's what they're trying to show. And it really, something like this could ruin someone's relationship, obviously.
Yeah.
And I always felt for Keiko when Molly tells her to please go away and I want mommy, you're not mommy.
Mm-hmm.
That would have just been heartbreaking for a
Mhm.
mom to deal with that. And again, it's something that is out of everybody's control here. So I was glad that they were able to resolve that particular storyline positively, because my gosh.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people don't like Keiko O'Brien. I like Keiko. So I really wanted a happy ending for her.
Yeah. I thought it was also Molly. It's probably the first time I think we see Hannah Hate
It's it.
And-
First and only time.
Only time, yeah.
in TNG, but the first time in general that she played the character. And you would have to think this is not even a year after Disaster, so the character has been aged up, as is done.
Oh, yes.
How about any regenerations? I again sort of going back to the Ferengi, they took the ship way too easy. Like, were they really that surprised that it was Klingons and then they were boarded all of a sudden? But I get why they did it. It's get off my ship. I get it. But that's my regeneration.
But
What
you
about
had
you
the
guys?
Ferengi. You had the Ferengi beam onto the bridge, and like Worf misses a shot, and then gets hit by a Ferengi, and then they take Data down. And we've had exactly that same setup with the Borg beaming on, and they still managed to get the Borg.
They don't
So
even
how
take
can
Data,
that happen?
and they don't even take Data down. He just kind of surrenders.
Yeah,
Like, and with his super fast speed, he could have like reached out and taken disarmed, because that Ferengi was like right in front of him. He could have reached that weapon, and it's, and the fact that, to go right with that, the fact that there wouldn't be some, there's only a handful of Ferengi that beam on the ship or whatever, the fact that, intruder alert would be sounded the minute the transporters were detected, and that, with the 1,014 people, as it is revealed in this episode, you could grab a phaser and fight back. Like, there wouldn't be some all-out battle for the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the best of the best on the Enterprise. So
Yeah.
they would be taking control. But
yeah. I have umbrage with Picard involving Alexander in the rescue effort. Fair enough with Rogue and the adults who can say he's getting like a 10-year-old. He's not even 10. How old is Alexander supposed to be? It's like Molly. He's been in the fertilizer to age up, but he's literally putting a child in danger. This episode didn't do a great job of showing how big the Enterprise is inside. So getting from that classroom to sickbay to steal those hyper sprays would have been a bit of a trek, no pun intended. So he could have been killed.
Yeah.
Not that Worf would have occurred.
Well, Worf should be very proud of Alexander, because he didn't get shot. Worf did. And honor and honor to Alexander, so he got a battle story. His first song could be sung about him.
Yeah.
And what's funny is in the next episode is Fistful of Datas. Worf again gets shot.
And
Like,
that's Alexander be put in
And
peril.
and Alexander doesn't. It's like, okay, but maybe your son isn't that bad. Let's up
Yes.
bothering them. I think one of my regenerations was almost because I've already sung her praises, but the young Guinan pushed a little bit too hard with Ro to enjoy being a childhood again. We're tapping into some major trauma that she went through when she was originally this age and this size. She was in a refugee camp. This is not something to celebrate. And Guinan, I felt, just kept pushing. I'm like, girl, stop. You're making the situation worse. And yeah.
Made it all the more worse and saccharine with the whole I can jump higher on the bed. It was
that was stupid. That was...
No, I think I vomited a little bit in my mouth.
Oh,
just go to the holodeck and get make a backyard with a cute little trampoline and actually jump. Then why? No, stop it.
wait, did you never jump on the bed or the couch?
No.
Oh.
I think I tried once and I got a whooping.
Oh.
So no.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Amy, did you jump on the bed?
Heck yes.
Oh.
And the couch.
Our rebellious counselor Amy Nelson.
I thought that was just what kids did.
Still bouncing on beds all over Vegas.
That's a different story.
Atta girl.
Oh, I've got a little continuity. It's not really a regeneration. It's just an eye roll. When they went through the transporter back at the end, the uniforms changed.
I thought Picard had a bigger. I thought the child Picard had the bigger uniform back on.
No, so they did it correctly at the beginning. So when they rematerialized as children, they were in baggy uniforms.
I'm gonna have to double check.
But then when they went in as children in the newly fitted size 0 uniforms, they came back out with adult size perfectly fitting. So it's like, if you're gonna build that into the story for one half, then at least redo it.
Yeah, but here's my thing. Maybe futuristic spandex is just that impressive, that it really does just grow with you.
I mean, in Discovery, they transport and change clothes now. So I mean, it's hypothetical. They could have programmed that in. Beverly added that to the recipe when they rebeamed Jean-Luc at the end.
Maybe O'Brien was showing off. He's like, damn, I've nearly killed my wife doing my actual day job in this episode. I better up my game and sort the uniforms out.
Yeah.
Right, there you go.
So something I've thought about, and this kind of goes right back to what you were talking about with Picard season 3 is, I know they send everybody out to do the tagging everybody with the comm badges so they could beam them in at the end. But if Jean-Luc had full control of the computer, you could have just scanned for Ferengi life forms and beamed them. So all they really would have had to have done is the Picard having the tantrum and going to Riker part of this, but they obviously needed to give everybody something to do and make it more adventurous. But you could just scan for Ferengi life forms and beam them if you're gonna do things that we've seen before on the show.
Right.
Maybe this just shows when you're catching the best off guard with another sort of issue or problem on the ship, how distracted they were from maybe being alert to this type of stuff. And so, it was probably the last thing on their minds. They didn't expect to see any aliens try to take over the ship, so their guard was down. And maybe it's just showing, you never know when danger's lurking, so you got to always be a little bit on your best.
Yeah, and almost like the use of the comm badge is quite interesting when we just look at this episode of Discovery we've just seen, and they're trying to put the little tags onto the whiskey barrel. It's like, well, they could have just put a comm badge on. There you go, something to lock onto. But going back to the Alexander in danger, the scene where he's tightly gripped that comm badge and the Ferengi have to wrestle it off him and activates it by squeezing too hard. Again, it's a child gripping something. If he'd have been in that cell with the Ferengi, he'd be dead.
Yeah.
Well, that would have solved a whole lot of problem. Worf,
This Davis would never have happened.
Worf would have been like, "Thanks, Jean-Luc."
Oh. Oof.
Well, let's get to some trivia for this episode. Now, this episode was directed by Adam Nimoy, son of Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
And if you remember, he directed this episode and Timescapes. And this was all as a bargaining chip because Leonard Nimoy, they wanted him to come back for Unification. And Leonard Nimoy did not want to do this, but threw in this, well, if you give my son 2 episodes to direct, then I will come. And so that is why we have Adam Nimoy directing this episode.
And I think he did a bloody good job.
He did.
My favorite piece of trivia for this episode is the young actress, Isis Carmen Jones, who plays young Guinan. This is not her first time playing Bebe Whoopi Goldberg.
Yep.
She also played Bebe Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act.
Yeah. I remember watching this and clocking that right away. I mean, I was probably 13 or 14 years old when that happened or whatever, maybe 15, whatever. But I remember because I liked Sister Act. I saw it when it came out and it's like, oh, that's the same actress.
Yes. And I just love, what's your claim to fame? I play Bebe Whoopi Goldberg everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So this is the penultimate TNG appearances for Ro, Guinan, and O'Brien, who are only seen once more after this episode. And it's also the very last time that Keiko appears on TNG. But and Guinan only will show up later in Suspicions, the Beverly episode, and Ro in what's that one? Preemptive Strike. O'Brien shows up in All Good Things, and we do see him kind of on the Enterprise in Emissary, obviously, as well. But really kind of a fun little side note on this is I just got this new novel called Pliable Truce from Dayton Ward that just came out. And just like the last novel, Shadows Have Offended, it's another TNG episode, basically. And this is going to tell, this is a Ro and Picard story. So here's more Ro, set just before Emissary. And Garrick's in this book, and they go to Terok Nor, and it's during the whole Cardassian, beginning the Cardassian Cardassians leaving their occupation on Bajor, and it deals a lot with that. So it's a Ro, Picard, Garrick story set on DS9 just before. Well, it's not even DS9 yet, just before Emissary. So another like episode we didn't see kind of book.
Nice.
Well, I know what I'm going out and buying today.
Good plug.
Yeah.
Anything with Garrick, done and done.
I love the kind of the intersecting timelines of where DS9 starts during season 6 of TNG, because everybody assumes because Birthright is where the Enterprise goes to DS9. Oh, that must be the start of DS9. And it's not. It's actually Chain of Command is set at the same time as Emissary, according to the star dates. So this is clearly in universe O'Brien's last TNG, because you don't really count all the things because it's in the past. And I kind of like the headcanon of he's transferred off the ship because he's messed up here in Rascals.
Oh, I love that.
You're out of here.
Fired.
This is your literal job. I think you need to go and find a new one, Mr. Transporter Guy.
You're going to go to this beat up old station that's falling apart, and that is your punishment.
Yeah.
And take your wife with you.
But if he hadn't, would they have died? Because the thing was whatchamacallit was breaking up.
The shuttle.
The shuttle, thank you. I haven't had enough coffee today. The shuttle was literally disintegrating around them.
I think this is kind of akin to did Deanna crash the Enterprise?
Yeah.
You know, it's a joke. we don't,
No, I know. But I do love the idea that this was like the final straw for, we're like, you know what, we're just going to send you to DS9 where you will be mercilessly tortured several times. You're welcome.
Well, one trivia that I really like is when Odo makes a reference in Bar Association, because he was like listing off what the Enterprise D did wrong. This is one of them when it's like, well, the Enterprise D got a security breach and was boarded. And, and I'm like, okay, that's this episode. So I love that.
I love callbacks. I love it because we had, Next Gen, DS9, Voyager all sort of overlapped for a couple years of absolute Trek royalty there. And I just loved when they took the opportunity to have those little callbacks and those little Easter eggs everywhere. And for those of us who were literally obsessed with the show, the giddiness, going, oh, I get it. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they had the reset at the end of each episode. There wasn't really a huge amount of consequence to previous matters. So when they actually talk about events in another episode, it's always, yes, they remember it like we do.
Yep. Star Trek universe.
And I think that was my favorite part with Lower Decks when it first came out, were all the callbacks that they constantly did in that show. And people were asking me, can I watch the show if I'm not a Trek fan? Can I just, and I'm like, well, it's super funny. You'll enjoy it no matter what, because it's just a very enjoyable show. But it's better if you get the jokes.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot that you just won't. You'll be like, okay.
Oh, this is a good piece of trivia. The young Picard, played by David Tristan Birkin, is the same actor who played Captain Picard's nephew, Rene Picard, in the episode Family. But he didn't play him in, Generations?
Yeah.
Which was,
Nexus.
they didn't even get somebody that looked remotely like him. It was just...
He might have
very
been too
disappointing.
old by then.
Yeah, but I think Mark has a good point. Where was the casting was way off though, because it didn't even look like they tried to mimic what the actor looked like.
No.
I mean, we've seen some really good castings for younger versions, and that was just not it.
And we know Trek has a good history of de-aging and how well that turns out.
Or aging.
I always laughed when they showed how old Picard would look like 25 years later, and here we are like 40 years later, and like Patrick Stewart looks the same.
Yeah.
He looks the same. He's aging just so fantastically. Also, I'd like to give a shout out this week. Happy belated 85th birthday to Mr. Ian McKellen.
Oh.
Yes, Mr. Patrick Stewart's BFF. I just want to give a little shout out to Ian. I'm sure he's listening.
Come on, Magneto.
Please like and subscribe to the episode, Mr. McKellen.
Can you retweet us?
Yeah, right.
So the last bit of trivia that I found very interesting, and I was like, I want to know your take, like a what if scenario. So Ro was not seen returning to an adult in this episode. The writing staff considered having her choose to remain as a child. And Jerry Taylor commented, where else but on Star Trek could you do something like that? But it seemed too drastic for us, and we were sort of squelched on that idea. So I wanted to ask, is Ro the right choice? Like, what if she had remained a child for the rest of the run? And Christos, you sort of thought that Guinan would have been a better choice.
Yeah. Well, first off, it could have been like Michelle Forbes's punishment for not taking the leading role on DS9. Fine, we're just going to turn you into a kid.
There you go.
But I think they gave her the best stakes in that sense, because she had such a terrible childhood that, like, here's your chance to go back and maybe experience it the right way. But are you really a child when your mind is not a child?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any of the emotional traumas go away. It just gives you more opportunity to kind of reset and have more time in life. So, and so ultimately, it's probably best that they didn't do it. But like I stand by my comment earlier that Guinan's better outlook on life and the universe and everything just seemed like, sure, I'll go do that again. She's already used to living long and doesn't seem to faze her. Whereas like other people would be afraid of, well, if I go back 20 or 30 years, everybody I know is going to age away from me and things like that. Guinan wouldn't be bothered by that. She's kind of used to it.
Yeah.
Ron Laren is one of my favorite characters in Star Trek. Kelsey Pre's strong woman. And I loved the whole running off and joining the Maquis element to her storyline. So I wouldn't have wanted to lose that by going with this idea. But it would have saved us from 30 years of did she die in the Dominion War, only to get that question then answered to bring her back in Picard and kill her off. So I could have lived with this, and I think I would have found it a satisfying conclusion to a 2-season guest star. And I think it would have, as you've just said, Christos, it would have made sense of righting a wrong.
So my tinfoil hat theory on this has nothing to do with Rascals, by the way. It's just picking up where you left off, Kelvin. I wonder if Ro didn't die. Was somehow beamed off at the last minute, and at some point, maybe she'll come back when Legacy gets greenlit.
That's already kind of been said to your point there. There was this scene where we saw Tuvok and whatnot that we were actually supposed to see a scene where they find a bunch of Starfleet people in a room, and it's supposed to be people we know, and Ro was supposed to be one of them. But time, money, whatever was running out, as it was, they were really budget constrained and time constrained. So we were supposed to see that Ro survived. So that can still happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, please.
So if Sir Ian McKellen is listening, can you call Michelle Forbes and be like, this needs to happen? Thank you. Thank you.
So I would like to see it, maybe, but then I think no, not, because you definitely could take advantage of Ro. As you said, she's an adult, but smaller. So if only we had a kid to go into this crevice and go into this Jeffrey's tubes or blah, blah, blah. Or the small hands could fit in. And then I'm like, okay, now we're on the verge of like child labor, but not a child because she's an adult. Then, or we could use her to like Picard did. I want my daddy, just sort of throw it off guard or, use little Ro for that. Might be too much of a tool character, and I don't know how I feel about that.
No, I think that comes back to the exocomps and the using of something just because of its size, and almost like she would just be expendable at that point. And Ro is so much of a richer character than using
Peanut
her
hamper.
Peanut hamper.
Mark, would you have liked to have Ro stay this child form, or do you prefer that she's now an adult?
Is that even a question? Do I want more children on TNG? I mean, is this a joke? Is that why you're asking? I mean, what in the hell? No, clearly I do not. No. Bad enough we get the one-off Alexander Rozhenko episodes. No, definitely don't want more children on my TNG. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's get to your final thoughts of TNG's Rascals. This is a part 5, so we have a lot of episodes to consider of who done it better. I know that was poor English. So previously covered Voyager's Message in a Bottle, Enterprise's Acquisition, Deep Space Nine's Civil Defense, and Strange New Worlds' Serene Squall. Kristin, let's start with you.
I mean, if we're just going by favorite episode, period, this one will always supersede almost any other Star Trek episode. This was one of the ones that I loved rewatching as a child. I actually think it was taped off of the TV onto a VHS that I could rewatch. And I had such a crush on the little Picard actor because I was about that age. But I also really love Message in a Bottle. I think that is, again, it's these campy episodes. I just love them. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy the social, political, and seriousness of Trek and having those in-depth discussions. But sometimes I also just love to watch pure ridiculousness. So, yeah.
Mark, who did it better for Get Off My Ship series?
Well, I thought that, so I'll go through Serene Squall. I feel like it's Strange New Worlds, and I love Strange New Worlds, but that whole acting like, pirates and our matey, and I don't know, it was a little bit on the cringy. I didn't like the pirates that they had. I didn't think they were that cool. Actually, Angel was the coolest pirate, sorry. But the other ones weren't menacing enough. They could have done better. Civil Defense, that one, there was some menace. That one, I truly was a little bit freaked out during that episode. But Deep Space Nine does the scary a little bit better anyway. Enterprise Acquisition, that was just fun. I enjoy seeing the Ferengi. We have the Ferengi in this one too. Yeah. So that one, that was a good one too, but it's more fun. Voyager, Message in a Bottle. Doctor episodes, tough because I love all the Doctor episodes. But he teamed up with Andy Dick, and I don't know how I feel about the Andy Dick version of himself. So, man, if I have to, there's a lot of good ones here, but I guess I got to go with DS9 Civil Defense.
Okay, all right. Christos, how about you?
Well, everybody knows I hate the whole get off my ship trope. Like, I hate when our ships are taken over by the enemy. I just don't like those kinds of stories. But, I mean, obviously, I need to pick one. So I'm going to go with Voyager's Message in a Bottle because I really do like that episode. And I think it's very, very, very creative the way they were able to design that whole premise and get the Doctor to go back, and he actually gets to assist in saving an experimental Federation ship. So I really do like that, and I do like that it's our first time too that we really see, Voyager go back to the Starfleet, and at least the Doctor is able to tell Starfleet that Voyager is still with us and the crew's still alive, and so I like all of that, all those elements to it. I think we see the First Contact uniforms in that episode, and why the Doctor didn't bring back that pattern for the rest of the crew, I don't know. But anyways, Voyager, Message in a Bottle.
All right, Kelvin.
Christos, you've just sent me mentally on a uniform continuity mind spin now, so I'm going to focus on my answer.
Here to help.
I could very easily say Civil Defense or Rascals, but I think I would just be choosing favorite episode rather than exploration of this theme. So I am going to say Message in a Bottle also, because I think the retake the ship, get off my ship subject is a lot stronger in coming through than it is in my other two preferred episodes to watch for Civil Defense and Rascals.
Can I just say, though?
Yes.
My favorite episodes for the Get Off My Ship trope were Basics Part 1 and Part 2. Because
one for the future.
Yeah, it's with the Kazon taking over Voyager and them being put on a planet. Like, how actually are they going to get this back? The captain is on the planet building fire and eating bugs. And watching Suter really come into his, oh my gosh, that's a character I wish had stuck around longer. I loved him.
Kristin, that episode gives me so much anxiety, both of them. I can watch it and not watch it, but I always say with Basics Part 1, that's how I describe me having a bad week. I'm just like Voyager, slowly taking a beating so that by the end of the week, nothing works anymore. Self-destruct has been disabled. That's what happens to me after a long week. Basics
You've
Part
been
1.
pecked to death on the starboard ventral.
Exactly.
What?
Pecked to death. Ouch.
Well, for my Get Off My Ship series, I just can't choose Rascals because of the dual nature, this mashup transporter. So I'm just going to put that aside. But that one, I mean, y'all know I love TNG. So I'm going to surprise you and choose acquisition because I think they did it well. We first time meeting the Ferengi, which makes sense. We don't know what to expect. So them taking over their ship, it makes sense because they're not really going to do much more. And then we get to confuse them and, well, you need to be the number one because they're, and how Archer flips it and sort of the same type of I'm going to outsmart the Ferengi we get to see here first. And so I'm going to say first is best and go with Enterprise acquisition.
Good choice. And we get Connor in his underwear.
Yes.
That's really why it's the best. Let's all just be honest.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, Kelvin, and Kristin. Whether you've got Xbox or Nintendo, check out Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. 2 episodes enter the arena, 1 comes out victorious. Join hosts Joe and Kevin, and a guest, as they debate which should win the Batleth battle. Grab your popcorn as you listen to Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed, but should definitely check out. Hosted by Mark and Matt. Don your apron for The Food Replicator, where Matthew eats and drinks his way through the Star Trek cocktail and 3 cookbooks. Beam Aboard Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Steven. In order to not repeat it, listen to History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissy and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissy and Thad. Curl up with a good book and delve into beta canon with Peter, host of the online Trek Book Club on Twitter, and his new companion, Trek Book Club podcast. Test your Trek knowledge with Trexperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Whether you're a member of Starfleet Federation or Planetary Union, go check out Union Federation, covering current Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Head over to YouTube and watch The View Screen live on Sundays, your Trek-inspired talk show hosted by Kelvin and Amy, with Season 2 starting in September for a 10-week run. Spill the tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with a LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the Tea-Bev. And for our Patreon members, we have the Hive Mind with monthly script readings. Let's Fly, a Discovery reaction show. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics. Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio. Christos, what are we talking about next week?
Well, on next week's episode, we will be taking it from the top, with our Taking It From the Top series, with our premiere pilot episode of Strange New Worlds. And that is part 8 in that series. So that's probably one of the most fleshed out series here on All Good Things.
We've been taking it from the top for ages.
I know.
We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, or on our Discord server to continue our discussion there. You can also reach us at All Good Pod on the X Twitter place and the Bluesky and the network at BQN Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Bluesky, and Instagram. We have also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching their master feed. Links can be found in the show note. So, Christos, where can people find you when you transport with 20% less of yourself?
40% less. 40% less.
No, they're saying it was 80%.
There was a 40% drop in mass.
Oh my gosh. Okay. 40%. Thank you. Oh,
Wow,
Shame on
math.
me.
It's numbers, Amy. Jeez.
I know.
Well, hopefully. I mean, I'd love to just be transported and be like, wait, 40% less. Like, oh, that's quite the diet.
Yeah, but you're looking so good. That's why I thought, okay, I'm going to give you your props.
I know. I'm really looking forward to STLV this year, like really filling out those costumes. Nice. You can find me on Facebook in the BQN Collective. You can find me in Discord, which I really love. And you can find me on Instagram at GreekGeekSD or at What's the T-Bev. And Mark, where can people find you when you're not spending your free time jumping up and down on the bed?
When I'm not doing that, you can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook group. You can find me on Cinema Z, the other podcast I host on the network. We discuss movies. And I'm on Bluesky and a lot of the other socials at MW207. So, Kristin, where can people find you when you're not using crayons to draw pictures of your mother?
Oh, I actually used to do that. People can find me, of course, on the BQN Collective on Facebook. I am on Instagram at kstrats, STRATZ, and I am on Reddit at user Garrick's Fan Club. So Kelvin, where can people find you when you're not taking the Enterprise back from the Ferengi?
Ooh, when I'm not doing that, you can find me on Discord, on the BQN Collective Facebook group, or you can come for me directly at the socials at Kelvin's Timeline. And Amy, where can people find you finally when you're not telling school children that viroxic nucleic acids are a real thing that happen at puberty?
It just might happen. You can find me here on the network where I am co-hosting Union Federation that's covering the new Trek. I am on our Facebook group BQN Collective, but again, favorite place, Discord server, Amy Nelson 522.
If you'd like to help all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can join Let's Fly reaction show, script readings, and enjoy our special Patreon-only shows of It's Green and Amy's Math Moments. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get the details and watch your messages.
If becoming a patron isn't your thing, you can still support the show by sharing our posts on social media, talking about it with your friends, or hitting the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leaving us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show.
At this time, we would like to thank our very own associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Jenediah Seastrum. A special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and to Mark White for our artwork each and every week, which I've already seen this week's artwork and looks very cool.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening.
We hope you'll join us
as we search out
all good things. I know. What's after Strange New Worlds?
Starfleet Academy.
Well,
there's
is that
been more-
going to be? We're going to close out our first series,
Have we done them all?
right? Well, that's what I'm asking. Is there anything
so
after
far,
Strange New Worlds?
Have there only been 8 series? There's been 5? No, there's more than that. There was 5 series, Enterprise,
I don't
Discovery
think we've
was
done
6.
Prodigy.
Yeah, there's more, because there was 5, Discovery was 6, 7 was Picard, 8 Strange New Worlds, Prodigy, and Lower Decks. So you have 10 series right now, so you could do it. You got more to go.
And then we'll have it as well when Starfleet Academy comes out, or whatever
Okay.
we're gonna call it.
And that'll be 11.
Done.
Yeah.
TNG, DS9, Voyager. We've done Lower Decks twice, it looks like.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's a bit weird, but
Picard, Discovery, Strange New Worlds. So what
we've not done
haven't we
original. Well, we've not
Yeah, I
done
did-
Cage, and we've not done Where No One Has Gone Before from TOS.
Oh yeah, we
Prodigy.
haven't even done TOS.
Oh my
Prodigy.
god, let's do the Cage.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah, TOS and Prodigy. All right. Okay. Got it right.
And you could technically do TOS twice if you wanted
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. And then we can get to the what did we call?
Giving it to the bottom.
Well, you are doing the finales, right? We've done the
Yeah,
finales. haven't we?
yeah, we have a name for it. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but okay.